My name is Kris Kinnaird. I'm the Product Marketing Manager at Farmers Edge, and I'm happy to be here today discussing the opportunity we have to work with Farmers Edge and our platform and how it can provide different users, along with myself, as I am a farmer, in support in data collection services to optimize our input investments. Then also, if there's any opportunities outside of that in terms of soil sampling or fertility management. So if we take a look at the brief agenda here this morning, I'm glad that we are discussing these topics for a few reasons. One, this is how I use digital platforms as a farmer, and my hope is to explain how few steps are actually required to get value out of the data sets that you are producing. And so I like to show this slide in a lot of conversations because it summarizes all of the different data collection software and hardware that companies utilize, and especially Farmers Edge. We have a long list of different data collection hardware that we're utilizing on the farm to support you in your data collection needs. And the big thing there is supporting you. The data that is being collected by the Farmers Edge hardware, the data is yours and yours alone. And all we are trying to do is support you with generating insights based off of that data that you can then make a decision or take action based off of that information. So just summarizing it in a location, in this case, our Farm Command platform, help you understand what's going across your operation and support you being more efficient and more profitable at the end of the year. And so when we look at these, we see weather stations, telematics device, which is a cam plug that we're installing in tractors and sprayers and combines, satellite imagery and soil sampling, can scale device, which is a grain cart weighing device. We have soil moisture probes and a partnership that gives us access to irrigation monitoring devices. So if you think about those different data collection pieces, I want to show you the next slide, and I encourage you to comment in the question box for this as well. It's somewhat of a poll. What is the most important data set to collect for your operation? Is that soil test data or weather, equipment, soil moisture, or if it's something else, please comment. It's interesting to see what others utilize across their operation and what they feel is the most important to their operation. We'll leave that up here for a second. Perfect. So when we consider, Farmers Edge as a leader in digital agriculture, we've been building a digital agriculture ecosystem that links the interactive relationships a grower has with various vendors. Essentially, it's one platform to connect growers with all their trusted advisors and create an opportunity to bridge the agronomic acre with these potential users. The result is a mutually beneficial digital platform that all partners of that digital ecosystem can utilize. So if you think about opportunities for some of the data collection pieces that we were looking at, how can I share satellite imagery and growth stage models with an agronomist who is doing work for me? I think that if I'm paying somebody to scout my fields, I want them to have these types of resources in their hand so they're going to do a better job for me. Because who does that benefit? Ultimately, it benefits you as a farmer, but there's potential for that data to benefit everybody. You as the grower, the owner of that data, like I mentioned before, but can give access to whoever you'd like. Given that access, you reap the benefits as these folks listed here are all working for and or alongside you to better the relationship that you may have with them. What I feel this conversation comes down to is the flow of data. There's a natural progression that the data sets you're collecting should take when we look from the start of the planting season to harvest and the profit analysis season. When we discuss putting the data to work for us on the farm, we need that to be very simple. And in my experience as a farmer, using ag tech platforms during my career has become way easier. The difficulty now, in many cases, is the decision on which platform to use. Obviously, I'm here as an advocate of Farmers Edge, but I hope as we walk through this experience, you can tell I believe in these methods as an everyday user myself. Plus, there are some added benefits to Farmers Edge versus others. So let's start with a plan. What does our season always look like? Well, plan has a lot of different features. It can be getting equipment ready, to making purchases, to planning applications and making applications, scouting and insurance, and even more areas are creeping into our plans as carbon sequestration and generating offsets is such a large topic of discussion these days. But let's focus on a few of those areas. We want to plan what we will apply, when we will apply it, how we will apply, and overall what costs are associated with each area of a plan. Having an accurate record of this helps us understand how each of the following will affect our plan positively or negatively with reaching our production goal. Some of the factors are out of our control, like weather, but at least we have sources of data collection like weather stations that can help us understand what potentially negative effects have affected our field or reduced our potential that are somewhat out of our control. When using any platform, I think when it's agriculture related or not, reducing manual data entry is very important. We're all busy and do not have time for double data entry, especially of the same information. Because of this, the integration of different sources is important. So the main area of manual data entry that we have our farmers completing or working with our farmers to complete is building a plan. If you're doing it in a spreadsheet today, or if you're using a crop planning platform that is limited to only planning and not supporting your other areas of data collection, then I want you to follow through this process, because I know when I build a crop plan in our Farm Command platform, the field specific information that I've entered will automatically flow to other areas it's required to give me value of what I'm producing in the field. Making the plan is a simple process. We've designed a layout that keeps farm expenses organized, with expenses like seed, chemical and fertilizer, insurance, land rent, and wages, all in one area. We know the analysis of what that goal is, including all factors. So as we look at the screenshot here, this is an example of a soybean crop plan where there's 3 different applications of a pre-burn application, which we're showing on the screen, a seeding and fertilizing application, and then in crop. So I'm giving it a name, a target date, entering a supply, and an application rate potential that is providing me with what my cost per acre and total cost is, what the supply or how much of the supply is actually required to complete that application. So it's very intuitive to work through, and it keeps this information stored in one place. So again, that I can utilize it in other areas and not have to do double data entry on some of this information I've already entered once. We also want to help visualize the target or the goal. If I spend time entering all of my expense information before I head into the field, and of course add any additional or unplanned expenses in season, I want to see how things are going to play out. And speaking to my personal experience in the past, I would use an Excel sheet for this type of work, being able to enter and adjust all of my targets for yields or targets of selling prices to understand what my break evens or what my margins will be. What my target revenue is, and what my planned expenses are, and what my goal for profitability is per acre are all displayed in a nice format here, where I can then utilize the different managing of different fields to pull up that information. If it's March 1st, the market's change, and I want to adjust my selling prices, it's easy. If it's March 15th and a target just hit, well, my average price might have went might be more in stone throughout the season, and I can play with those numbers. And so it can be fun to see how different values are going to change based off of what I have planned. And so when we look at the preseason tab of this profit summary, all of my expense values are contributing from crop plans, or the expenses I mentioned earlier of wages or equipment or whatever other expenses accumulated to get me to a point where I'm calculating profitability using the values that are being displayed and calculated in other areas that I've entered them. But now that I've made a plan, naturally we turn a plan into an actual event. That event is applications of seed, chemical, fertilizer, getting into the field and starting some of the data creation and collection. And I say creation because some of the data sets we're generating when making field passes can now be put to more than just traditional uses. So let's take a look at some of those. So remember all the information we just entered into crop plans. We didn't want to re-enter that into an operation tracking, or as we call it with Farm Command, our jobs. We want that to flow over. So all of the products and rates I've associated with the field just flow into these jobs by pressing a few buttons rather than actually having to re-enter them. So you can see that on the left-hand side. I can create a job from a crop plan. So pulling in my plan for the wheat 2022 season, choosing what type of application that is, selecting the type of application, and entering any implements and machines that are going to be required to make that application. So we get to the point on the screen here where we have a list of all applications that have taken place, the date and time, the implements, the supplies, and of course there are costs associated with that, which I'll talk about in a second. But first, let's talk about some of those more traditional uses. We've all had some version of a notebook or a binder in the tractor cab. We've all had that calendar in the office showing what was done, whether it's on a whiteboard or one of those use cases. We've all used FarmWorks or SMS or manually imported applied data into those types of platforms for review. But I think we've also wished we could see how much coverage our operator has completely without taking a screenshot on Google Maps and showing what coverage we think was done by drawing on our smartphone or a tablet. The list really goes on for how operational tracking in the past has occurred. And I'm not saying these methods were not effective, but they were time consuming, or they can be time consuming. Technology can help with these processes. The goal here is to help make the reporting easier, tracking easier, and the data collection easier and in one place for everyone that needs access to that information to access very seamlessly. So once I get to the point of being able to create jobs, we want to make sure that it's easier to manage. And again, simplifying that tracking process as much as possible. We're able to make our digital platform management available across most brands of machinery and rate controllers and yield monitors, and that's really unique. I can pull up Farm Command on my Case Pro 700 in my sprayer, or my John Deere 2630 in my combine, or my Topcon X30 in my planting tractor, and manage all of those jobs without requiring a smartphone or a tablet in the cab. But if all else fails, maybe there's a task at hand that I wasn't planning for, or if I'm too busy with that task at hand, or possibly just forgot, our system will automatically generate these jobs based off of the equipment, and again, that CAN plug, entering the field. Then all I have to do is backfill the supplies I applied into that job afterwards. It's quite foolproof, making sure that we're tracking everything that goes on across that operation. Now, I didn't mention these types in the traditional section, but they very much an area part of that. If you're a larger farmer that often has multiple machines on the go, then live machine tracking can be very important. When I think about value from the Farm Command platform, it's often small things that lead to value for my operation. It's being able to pull up live equipment and seeing where my dad is in the field as I'm sitting in the office, or knowing his fuel level and being able to see if I need to meet him on the edge of the field with a slip tank, or being able to look in the past and historical equipment tracking and seeing where the path machine was and did we get that complete coverage, or looking at an equipment report and being able to track my operational efficiency or operator efficiency. So acres per hour or completed acres within a day or a week. All of these for machinery tracking and fuel usage can be extremely valuable. And again, not having to do any manual work to collect that type of information. And when we talk about application mapping and automated file transfer, that's another very important feature just from the farm management perspective in general, but from that carbon offset generation. With carbon offset generation, we need to understand what was applied, when it was applied, and what implements were used to make that application. Because when we talk about soil disturbance, the implement used and the method that ground or that soil was disturbed is very important for understanding how many offsets can be generated. I really treat the review of application data as what I plan to apply, what was actually applied, and proof that my plan is following through. How many of you have sectional control? Or what about variable rate? Analyzing machine overlap to save on inputs and determine if an upgrade is needed is a very useful case there. This type of information, along with the jobs, because the applied data can be that visual confirmation of what took place or that visual proof, but the jobs are more of that report type information that is required to verify farming practices. This is such an exciting topic, so again, please feel free to throw a comment if you'd like us to follow up with you directly about the carbon space. Let's take it to the next step though and talk about in-season analysis. Now that I've got my seed into the ground, there are still some important applications that can take place. Herbicide and fungicide applications, plant growth regulators, or top dressing are all critical, and how data collection has already occurred and continues to occur. I like this example as a farmer or an agronomist that needs to scout 4,000 acres or maybe 100,000 acres if they're an agronomist. If I plan to scout these fields 20 times, 25 or 30 times throughout the season, that is a lot of field visits for staging, understanding pest or disease pressure, scouting for applications or after applications for product efficacy. All are important, but take so much time and fuel if we think about traveling to those fields to complete. We can use features like satellite imagery, weather stations for forecasting, yield prediction for each field, growth stage, disease and pest modeling, and then profit awareness to improve efficiency quite drastically. If I can reduce my field visits by 10, 20, or even 40%, all while still having as good or even better understanding of what's going on within the fields that I'm scouting, I can allocate that newfound time to other areas of my operation. I think it's effective in improving my efficiency, contributing positively to my profit. And to go back to the point about sharing information with trusted advisors, if I'm paying for a service that offers features like this and paying for scouting services, I want the folks in my fields to be using these types of data sets so they do a better job for me. It's really a win-win. We are not trying to replace somebody who's scouting fields. We're trying to help them do a better job. All in all, the goal of the data in season is to support critical decision making and understand what risks are potentially having a negative effect on yields. Now let's take the next step of data record review. And as I mentioned before, if applied data is proof of what was planned to applied was actually applied, then harvest data is the report card that scores individual areas within a field, giving us an overall view of production on our farm. Data collection and having a method of reviewing information like seasonal reports, field and yield data, both live and historical, is important for making sure that we learn from the past season and all those decisions we made in the past season. Farming is such a crazy thing in my mind that although it's year round, we only have a certain amount of growing season in our life, and the sample size is quite small relative to other industries. We need to be effective and learning from our past experiences and building on that moving forward. So always learning and always being able to adapt and change and look ahead. We have a variety of different options for managing, I guess, post-season reports. It doesn't have to be the traditional applied data, harvest data. Both are important. With so many sources of data collection a farmer can access, customization based on needs is an option. So take this seasonal weather summary, for example. We sent this to all of our customers in 2021. It reviews seasonal totals, averages, and really so much more, because we're not only looking at actual farmer's edge weather stations that have been installed on the edge of the field, we're looking at the results of how it can compare to long-term averages. Or maybe you're a farmer who in the past has marked down on the edge of your calendar how much rainfall a particular month has occurred. And you want to be accurate with that, but maybe you've missed some. Let the data collection sources take care of that for you. I think this has been a great resource for our operation, not only understanding what is taking place and when it has taken place, but also the severe weather events that occur. When we talk about opportunities with the digital ecosystem, being able to report not only after the fact in a summary, but live in season, some of these severe weather reports that can generate a claim, like frost or hail. If we know about those in season, we can be very proactive in communicating that with our insurance provider so that we're getting the coverage and the adjustments we need to get a potential payout in support for what we're paying for insurance. So there's definitely lots of opportunity here, but of course, just one of the many examples as we look at that long list of data collection hardware that Farmers Edge can provide. And so the last area that I want to discuss here is profit analysis. Profit analysis is more than just yield, as we've been working through here today, we need to review and understand profitability for all expenses that accumulate over the season. But we do have opportunities to look at different reports for this as well. This is an example of a variable rate advantage map where we are comparing variable rate fertilizer to conventional flat rate fertilizer and understanding not only what our yield responses are, but what our variable rate advantage is in terms of dollars per acre. I'll actually zoom in a little bit here. So on the yield response, actually, I'll start with the zone map. On the left-hand side, we can see a production zone map, where each one of these production zone maps is being managed differently with a different input value, so a different NPK and S. As we look on the right-hand side, we can see the yield response within each one of these production zones. We're seeing a positive yield response in the VR, which is the colored ones, versus the flat rate, which is the gray ones. But there's a very slight or small advantage in the zone 7. And in the middle here, what does that relate to us? Well, when we compare the VR to the conventional application, all of the zones are showing a positive return on investment, except for that zone 7. So even though overall across this field, they would have had a variable rate advantage of almost $34 per acre, there's something to learn from this. Historically, a zone 7 is a field that has potential within that zone already. I may look at this and say, well, we could probably reduce our nitrogen value down to 140 or 130 and still receive a positive return on investment and a higher yield than the conventional, but we're going to have a variable rate advantage that is positive in each one of these production zones. So these types of maps, for those that are new to variable rate or not convinced that it pays, they can be a great resource to tell the story as to what's going on within a particular field and across an entire operation. But of course, we want to be able to summarize that information within this profit summary as well, because now we have our post-harvest tab. So we went through pre-season, in-season, and post-harvest. And now in post-harvest, we're looking at the actual yield that the cam plug device or the yield monitor has collected, and using those values to calculate our expense break-evens, our revenue, and then of course, very same with in-season, we're using the completed jobs and farm expenses that have been added to calculate profitability on a per acre and per field basis. So this is all fairly new within the Farm Command platform in 2022, and probably the area that I'm most excited about utilizing moving ahead into the 2022 season. Ultimately, the message that I am trying to relay is that data leads to insights, which ultimately leads to an action or decision. The data collection needs to be automatic. So when we talk about weather and equipment and satellite imagery, all of that information just shows up for us within the platform. The insights need to be automatically displayed as well. So when we talk about weather forecasting and growth stage modeling, all of that needs to occur for us in the background for the most part, so that we can, as farmers or agriculture professionals, manage our operations to the highest level and take action based off of that. So the data collection needs to be automatic, insights generated need to be automatic, and the actions then can be taken more efficiently. When it all comes down to it, everything that we've discussed today, when using Farmer's Edge and Farm Command, requires me as a farmer to do two things. And it's not just two things at the start of the year and then I don't have to worry about it. It's something that I'm going to manage throughout the season. I need to, number one, create crop plans. Number two, start and complete jobs. Everything else just happens, right? I'm able to create my plan at the start of the season, manage and adjust as I see fit, and then start and complete those application or harvesting jobs as I'm going throughout the season. And then all of those insights that are going to support me in season, like the growth staging and yield prediction and satellite imagery, all just going to show up and allow me to understand my business more efficiently. And our goal at the Farmer's Edge team is just to show you how to access that information, get you started on creating plans and how to manage these jobs, and then where to access all of those different insights, whether they be a report or a model that I'm going to utilize in season.